Welcome back to another episode of Offensively Accurate, although it's hard to say that when I am so few and far between with the podcast. I figured I would go ahead and stream today, figured any kind of video I would go ahead and make or produce today would probably fall behind just simply due to the fact that the news cycle has been overtaken by the Elon versus Donald Trump drama and all of the other fallout and consequences that have come from that. Now, when I streamed this yesterday, it was obviously a hot topic item. A lot of people were in here, although I was largely disorganized. Today, we're only going to go ahead and probably just do, I would imagine, revisit it a little bit, but largely in store for today, we're going to be addressing some of the updates we have from that. And then we'll be moving on to Nick's response as well. I believe Fuentes had a couple good things in there. Largely, I think he was like thinking out loud as it referred to what his idea was, as it pertains to like what the real reason with this fallout is. We had a lot of very funny and, in my opinion, ignorant kind of ideas of it's all the big psyop and that they're going to shake hands at the end of the day. I don't think that's going to happen given the news we have about the phone call they were supposed to have. But beyond that, we'll actually visit some WikiLeaks. They've mentioned Nick Fuentes by name. We have Jimmy Dore also giving his opinion on Palantir 2. And then we also have Alan Dershowitz. He came out with a statement talking about how he wants Ghislain Maxwell pardoned. We'll dive into that a little bit too. And then we also have another clause being found about AI as it pertains to the big, beautiful bill. Thomas Massey went to length on that with, I believe her name is Dana Loesch. We'll cover that too. Maybe revisit the Zero Hedge article that came out literally an hour before this big blow up happened between Elon and Trump. And then we have the New York City mayoral debate, which centered around, guess what, Israel. And then we also have Dave Portnoy crashing out. Again, all these things kind of loosely tied to this idea of anti-Semitism and as well as the pro-Israel sentiment. And then a few other things too we'll get into as well as we go through some of the other news. But with that, we will go ahead and start with the Elon and Trump fallout. Now, one of the first things that we had following the big blow up later in the evening was, in fact, Elon Musk basically saying that he would, instead of decommissioning Space Dragon, that he would go ahead and maybe pull off on those things, right? It was funny. It was like a follower. He had like 130 followers at the time. He responded to Elon Musk. Elon Musk responded back to him. However, though, from Donald Trump's side of the aisle, it seems there's no interest in reconnecting or unburning the bridge, if you will. So I'll go ahead and put it on screen here. What we have here is from AF Post. Trump told Bret Baier of Fox News that he had no interest in talking to Elon Musk, had no concerns about his threat of a third party, and said that Elon has totally lost it. So I think as it sits right now, I do not expect that we are going to get any amount of Elon and Donald Trump rekindling, maybe ever. I do think when you see the kind of behavior exhibited by Donald Trump as he was asked in the follow-up questions as it pertains to the Epstein files, I would imagine that he did not take too kindly to that at all. Now, following this too, on Elon's side of the aisle, Tesla was going down. I think it was 9% reported initially. I think it was 14% later on. But AF Post is also reporting that Elon Musk lost $34 billion in a single day over his feud with Trump, and then Tesla itself as the company lost $150 billion. Which to Elon might not be that much, but I think overall to the individual shareholders and stockholders, they probably felt that. I believe 9mm SMG also posted, maybe not the specific numbers, but was pretty open about how much money he had lost in terms of his Tesla stock, which I think was his biggest portion of that. Now, in terms of the WikiLeaks quote, though, on this kind of the overall nature of this story, WikiLeaks had this little tweet or post that went a little viral, largely because of the fact that they did quote Nick Fuentes at the end of it here. Now, they write from WikiLeaks, Trump versus Musk, the Palantir Presidency. President Trump is deepening his alliance with Palantir, the surveillance tech giant with ties to Israel and the CIA. Just as he threatens to cancel Elon Musk's contracts over the recent fallout around the spending bill. The easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, Trump posted on Truth Social is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. Palantir is building a sweeping AI-driven database of U.S. citizens, integrating government-held data on everything from political activity to firearms ownership. Even within the Trump-aligned America First movement, this direction is raising alarm. Nick Fuentes, an influential hardline America First commentator, wrote, "Feeding every MAGA extremist into an AI database controlled by a CIA Mossad cutout. Seriously, if Palantir isn't the deep state, then what is?" Now, I think the one thing that's actually pretty funny in there is the way that they actually highlight who Nick Fuentes is, right? They write an influential hardline America First commentator, which is staunchly much different than what you would imagine Nick Fuentes is getting. Typically the preamble that follows him, right? It is a white supremacist, it is a neo-Nazi. Insert anything you want in there that kind of demonizes him to his furthest degree. But they finish it off by writing, "A deeper shift is underway. Trump is increasingly siding with Peter Thiel's surveillance empire and turning on Musk and the libertarian-leaning tech wing of MAGA." In my opinion, and I said it on the last show as well, part of the idea that I had when I put on my, conspiratorial hat, if you will, was the idea that Elon is actually working in tandem with Peter Thiel in order to elevate JD Vance. Now, Nick Fuentes actually spoke a little bit to this concept as well. Now, I'll go ahead and pull that up here as we get there. Now, the first clip actually does mention, and I see here from Albert Ojeda, he says, "I didn't know Elon was taking Stephen Miller's wife with him. Damn, dude got cucked." Yes, and then it was funny because there were even memes that were coming out about Elon's black eye, which was funny because the assumption there was that Stephen Miller got the best of him over that argument. He went down swinging. But we'll actually go to the first clip here, and this is actually, I think it was clipped by Etherwave of Nick Fuentes, and this is largely his speculation of, as they write, the true motivations behind the Trump and Elon fallout. Now, what won't be in this video clip, because I didn't want to have too many of the video clips here, is largely the belief that there is a kind of a knives out Julius Caesar moment, in Nick's words, which in a sense is largely the idea that all of these big tech guys are turning on Trump all at once. Kind of similar to how, Julius Caesar is depicted when everyone turns on him all at once, right? The famous line, "Et tu, Brute," which is, "And you, Brutus," because he was betrayed by the guy who he thought would never betray him. Now, we'll go ahead and get into this clip here, actually, because, again, a lot of the through lines with this, again, is hinging upon the fact that there is some beef and there is some connection here as it pertains to Palantir's positioning, as well as their connections to JD Vance, hinging on Elon's kind of endorsement of Ian Miles Strong, who largely said that Trump should be impeached and JD Vance should be elevated. And on those lines, you end up getting kind of this ideal that maybe Elon is helping push the needle for this. That Elon and Palantir and Thiel and Karp and the rest of the PayPal mafia see this as a good point in which they need to start brokering this. I largely also view it as what they could also potentially do is in a very public spat between Elon Musk as well as Donald Trump, JD Vance comes from underneath as he was on the Theo Von podcast, and he can kind of center himself in the middle and say, and he can be the one that brokers the peace between the two individuals, right? JD Vance can be like, "Oh, look at how good I'm negotiating. See, I got dad 1 and dad 2 to see eye to eye." And that would drive a bunch of public sentiment of being like, wow, JD Vance must be this really well-spoken guy. And it would then further kind of cement this astroturfing, and as Nick Fuentes puts it, this glazing of JD Vance, a figure who kind of came out of nowhere. But with that being said, here is the clip.
He was not elected. Trump was elected. Elon may have put $300 billion or $300 million behind Trump. You're not the president. The people voted for Trump. Thank you for your money. Thank you for your help. But the people, not me, but the people voted for Trump. That's just fair. But what if there's something else going on here? And again, this is speculative. This is not by any stretch, I'm claiming this as a fact. I'm not saying this is a totally coherent or perfect theory, but let's just spitball for a minute. Elon Musk went into the Oval Office the other day with a black eye. That's a little bit weird. Elon Musk came into the Oval Office a few days ago for a press conference with a giant black eye. Is that normal for the world's richest man to all of a sudden have a black eye? He said that his kid hit him in the face. His 4-year-old toddler punched him in the face. That's why he has a black eye. In the middle of all this, you're telling me Elon comes into the Oval Office ready to leave the Trump administration with a black eye, and 2 days later he's saying that Trump is named in the Epstein files, and that's normal? What's more, Elon Musk is taking Stephen Miller's wife out of the Trump administration. Stephen Miller is the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and National Security in the White House. Stephen Miller apparently has enormous influence. He's functioning like the prime minister in the government.
That is one thing of note, right? I do think part of the reason that adds another layer of complexity to that is the fact that you have Stephen Miller and Elon Musk who are going at each other. And then the viral post of Stephen Miller, where he kind of outlined all of the reasons why he thinks Elon is wrong about the big, beautiful bill, was community noted to death. I saw that earlier today. It had 20 links inside of it. And I think there could be, and I think he did also unfollow Stephen Miller, Elon Musk did. There probably also is another layer there too, where Stephen Miller feels extra kind of jaded by Elon Musk, because again, you're getting cucked by the world's richest man. I mean, it probably doesn't feel good that your wife is not going to go work full time for a guy you probably don't even have the best relationship with. But here's the rest of it.
And his wife, Katie Miller, was working in Doge. Now that Elon Musk is wrapping up Doge, he's taking her with him to work full time. Miller is on the side of the president on the bill. Elon is against, but he's taking Miller's wife with him. Now he's got a black eye. Now he's talking about Trump is named in the Epstein files. This is also happening at the same time that Peter Thiel was named in the New York Times as having received $40 million from Jeffrey Epstein. This is also happening, by the way, let's go a step further, at the same time as Israel is trying to push us into a war with Iran. A few days ago, there was a huge piece in Israeli media, not in American media, but in Israeli media, in the Jerusalem Post. It says that Israel is deeply concerned about two people inside the administration, JD Vance and Don Jr. Israel is concerned because Israel wants the United States to fight Iran.
Now, we even had the Zero Hedge article that went up, again, an hour before this whole Elon and Trump beef, where Zero Hedge writes the article, I believe, and paraphrasing, Trump is cutting away or doing away with all of the Israel hardliners in the administration. And they highlighted a few notable moves, one of which then being, Mike Waltz, who, again, wasn't even really fired. He was actually relegated to a different position. You also had a former IDF member. I believe her name was Maran Sarav or something like that. She was, again, moved around. I believe she was actually serving in the NSC. And there were a couple other notable ones in there. And that was kind of the running rhetoric even from Signalgate too, which was you were having a civil war inside of the administration between the pro-Israel hardliners and the anti-interventionists, which was JD Vance. And you even saw a little bit of that from the leaked messages that were in Signalgate. And I believe Pete Hegseth also being largely anti-interventionist as far as what I saw from the chats there too.
But Vance and Don Jr. do not. They are working with the president to purge the national security apparatus of Zionists. They just fired a few dual citizens from the national security apparatus earlier this week. And allegedly Vance and Don Jr. are behind this. They're taking control over the national security apparatus on behalf of America First. And they're trying to purge and sideline the dual citizens, the dual nationalists, dual allegiance having pro-Israel Zionists like Mike Waltz and others who have been pushing us on behalf of Israel to go to war with Iran. Well, Vance is the protege of Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel's being attacked under the auspices that he is in bed with Jeffrey Epstein. A week earlier, Palantir is under attack by the New York Times. They're saying that Palantir is taking over the government and making a database of every citizen. The same week, there's a big piece in the New Yorker about Curtis Yarvin, who is attached at the hip to Peter Thiel and JD Vance. Elon Musk is saying that he wants to make Vance the president of the United States. He says that Trump is named in the Epstein files. Vance should then replace him. So you have to wonder, is there more to the story than that Trump and Elon are mad at each other about the deficit and the bill? I mean, maybe that's the case. But it's a little bit conspicuous that all of these tech people are being put at the forefront, and in particular, their connections to the Israeli mob in the press at the same time that all of this is happening. I said last week, it's going to hit the fan imminently between the U.S., Israel, and Iran. The U.S. is purging pro-Israel people from the government. Vance is being blamed. Vance's patrons are being hit in the New York Times and in the New Yorker. Elon Musk seems to be attacking Trump and wants to anoint Vance. Elon has a black eye. Did somebody rough him up? Did somebody put him up to the job of...
I will say the one thing that I buy the least is that like this black eye came from like someone ran up and but he got into it, right? Or like, you know, Trump smacked him upside the head. Like it takes too much for me to believe that a scenario like that would have occurred and there wouldn't have been like a leak about it or somebody wouldn't have said something who would have been nearby because you know a staffer would have whistleblowed on something like that immediately. At least you would think. So that one I do kind of buy a little bit more of the fact that his son probably did whack him in the face of the scooter and it was just like super poor timing. But again, there's only so many coincidences that you can have in a row before you're like, okay, maybe there is something here. And I do think it's odd because it's, again, it goes to like the network and like the networking and the relationships between all of these big tech guys. And it's so convoluted at the end of the day. It's like unwinding the web. And so again, you know, shout out to people like Ryan Dawson and Whitney Webb who sit there and like they go through and break it down. And obviously Nick Fuentes too. But again, the network of this is so vast. And it's like every time, even myself personally, I try to like learn a bit more, go another piece by piece. The more you find out, well, actually, and then they were doing these backhand deals with this guy, and then they were connected to the CIA through this firm, and then this firm actually was sending data to the Mossad, and it's like, oh my gosh, dude, it's like it's so much. Also, forgive me, I'm not paying attention to chat. What is up, Trent Groiper? Also got a Greta Man in here too. Nice to see you guys. Hannibal Barca also writing. What if Muson has movies of Trump from a little island? They get him elected. Cheetos love giving money in his first term. Maybe Nick is correct that he has compromised. Well, I believe since the census episode has been released, or I guess since yesterday, since Fuentes did this, he did post a couple of things on X. And funny enough, his pre-recorded podcast episode with, I believe his name is Sean Kelly. I can't remember what the actual podcast name is, but he did it with Sean Kelly. And when he was on Sean Kelly, which we'll get to that clip here in a second, he even said in this pre-recorded before the Elon Musk and Trump beef that he did believe that Donald Trump probably was implicit in some form on the Epstein files. And even beyond that, as we'll get a little bit further along too, we'll go to Luke Rudkowski with Benny Johnson, kind of repeating what Nick Fuentes was saying. And again, Worrell, who's a part of America First TV on the Jarpeners podcast, has been saying it too for a bit, where he's been saying that it doesn't even matter what we get because he thinks that because there's no proven kind of chain of custody over the Epstein files, that he thinks that they're probably largely destroyed, or two, they might have just be artificial or fake, or someone would have edited them deceptively. So we're at a point now where even if someone does slide something in front of you and says, here, these are the Epstein files, you wouldn't even trust that. And I wouldn't even trust that either. And it's, again, pointing back to, again, the overall system here is the fact of there's no trust in it at all, which leads for no kind of general long-term success in anything because people have a hard time already having blind faith in even the most basic principles. What is up, Marcus? Love to see you in here. What is up, brother? He says, I don't trust JD Vance, and he never trusted JD Vance. I am right there with you. I've been a very openly vocal critic from him as well, too. And even I think on the most base form of the JD Vance critique I have is in like, what was it, 2021, when he was calling Trump Hitler, literally a year before, and, you know, he gets endorsed by Trump because Peter Thiel brings him in to Mar-a-Lago. It's like, you know, like Vance would have been how old? Like in his 30s at some point. And it's like, you know, at least to me, like, you know, I was younger than Vance, and at no point in my lifetime did I ever buy the he's literally Hitler garbage. And so I think at the most base level, you kind of question, like, what are his biases? What are his predispositions? Because nobody goes, he's literally Hitler, and then turns around and runs with him as a VP. I mean, like, that just seems insane. I mean, maybe JD Vance is just retarded, and he was shown he stopped listening to MSNBC, and now he believes differently. But again, I find that there's a bigger burden to believe that than there is to believe like he's some kind of malicious plant and like he's just doing things to, you know, move himself up and elevate himself. But for the rest of the clip, though, I'll go ahead and let Nick finish off here.
Sabotaging Trump in some way? I feel like there's more to this story than maybe we're being told. All of a sudden now, all these things are coming to a head. Jeffrey Epstein, Palantir, Israel's war with Iran, the ongoing purge of the national security apparatus, which has been ongoing, sidelining the dual loyalists. Something tells me there's more to the story here. And I think that if I were to take a stab in the dark, there are machinations underway to undermine Trump to get a war with Iran. If I had to take a wild guess, because when you speculate about these things, and that's really what it is baseless speculation, circumstantial, admittedly, it's all circumstantial. But if we have to look at who would benefit now, at any time, to undermine this administration, with Elon leading the charge and him getting roughed up, it would be some kind of angle to bring Trump down to get a war with Iran. Or maybe secondarily, maybe they don't want the bill because they don't want actually to enforce the border. That might be the only other thing that I can think of.
And he does have a good point here. If you take it away from Palantir, right? Let's say we drop the idea that Palantir's, the one that's the goal, right? Is the cementing of Palantir inside, in the centralization at the federal level. With him saying here, right? Maybe this is an attempt to somehow get Trump out of power and get someone in there who would be more likely to go to war with Iran. And again, a lot of what the breakdown of our relationship recently and a lot of the PR flack that's come has been Netanyahu getting basically lambasted for, all of just brutal techniques, the amount of children and women that have been dying. They're losing the PR battle as well. And you have all these kind of public moments here in the States where people are clearly, especially on X, voicing how little they want to go and support Israel, and voicing just the overall kind of, let's just not even taking a side. I think the most prominent voice has largely been, at least the conservative media, well, let's just not even be involved at all. And I do think that is an angle to consider, seeing how, again, if you go to Jeffrey Sachs, right, the seven wars, I always forget the terminology there, but largely Iran is the last one on the list in terms of the powers they're wanting to go for. And again, to me, it's the enriched uranium thing. I think Scott Horton said it best, for we've been talking about this for Lord knows how long, right? 20 years. Iran's always on the verge of being able to enrich uranium one more step. They have nukes. And, Scott Horton worded it really well, where there's other nations, right, that are similar to Iran, and the fact that they don't have military nuclear capability, but in terms of civil engineering, they do have the capability to enrich their uranium to levels that could then in turn be used for nuclear military capabilities. And so it's just this joke that if they've had that capability for so long and they've never used it, why are we so concerned? It's if they've been able to do it for 10 years and haven't, shouldn't at some point you kind of trust they maybe won't build the program that they're, everyone's trying to tell us to fear? It's just something to think about. But there's only 10 seconds left in this clip here.
Which is that, then again, look, would JD Vance not secure the border? Certainly he would. Or he would be in favor of that.
Yeah, I really can't expect it to be on the border. I have a harder time buying that. I do think the border is the lowest hanging fruit for the most. I mean, anybody, even a lot of like liberals and left leaning individuals are very like pro, at least getting some kind of grasp or apprehension of what's going on at the border. I have a harder time buying that though. Now the second clip though, goes back to like what I deem as my kind of like my primary theory on this. And again from Nick Fuentes here. I'm gonna go ahead and click off on some of these here. But this one here goes back to the kind of Julius Caesar moment, the knives out moment, if you will, and kind of the speculation there as it surrounds that too, and kind of on the mindset that what if Elon is working in tandem with Karp and Peter Thiel. But here's a little 2-minute clip of that.
My right hand to God. If Vance and Elon and the rest of them are conspiring against Trump, I am loyal to Trump all the way. The reason I did not support Trump in 24 is because he was surrounded by these people. I said, look, I like Trump. I agree with him. But he's got Miriam Adelson on one side, and he's got these pro-Israel Jews on the other. And on the other side is Silicon Valley, which is in the middle there. I said, so he appointed JD Vance. That guy's an ever-Trumper. He's got Susie Wiles, Chris LaCivita. These people do not have his best interests in mind. I said a year ago, if Trump wins, they're going to kill him. I said if Trump wins, they will conspire to kill Trump to get Vance in the presidency. They'll either maneuver to get Vance the presidency before Trump leaves office, or they'll get him killed if he isn't compliant. So this is like one of those situations where, Trump, I ideologically agree with him more than I do the rest of them. I trust him more than the rest of them. If this is like a knives out Julius Caesar moment, I ride for Trump all day. If it's Trump versus Vance, Elon, Thiel, the rest of them, I could be a baby and say, hey, Trump betrayed us. It's not personal for me. I would say, fuck them. I'm with Trump. And I think something like that is coming into fruition here. Something strange is going on, mark my words, between AI, Palantir, Vance, Elon, Doge. It's all very strange. It's all very strange, and I don't trust any of it. I don't take any of it at face value.
Which I do largely agree with all of that there. House comment in here, Cicero, Brutus, etc. were all hunted down and killed in the end. Yes, it's been a minute since I've actually read the play. It's been a long time. It's actually been since high school, but yes. I believe that's like the majority of the story actually is the aftermath of Caesar getting killed. A lot of it is speculation, and I think that does put us in a rough spot. Although to me personally, like I have a harder time just getting around behind Trump and rallying behind him again, especially like as a Christian nationalist. Like I do think there is a problem in the fact that like he also does kind of not speak to that. Like I guess I get like the fact that the evangelicals love him, and like a lot of the Christian community does like the guy. I just have a harder time getting behind him just for ideological misalignment. Not that like that's a good reason. It's almost like impractical to not be behind Trump. I mean, I'm pro him just in relativity terms. But I would agree on that list, right? If you were to organize it, right, you throw Elon Musk, you throw JD Vance, and you throw Donald Trump in there. Who do I trust the most out of that group of guys? Well, yeah, by far, I trust Donald Trump, by far out of those guys, right? I definitely don't trust the guy who spurged out because he wanted to bring Indians into the country so he could destroy us all over, increasing his GDP by 0.8%. And I definitely don't trust the guy who came out of nowhere, who talks out two sides of his mouth and says he grew up in Appalachia, but when he came from Middletown, Ohio. And then add on top of that, like he's married to an Indian woman, and like not like that by itself is anything wild, but I do think it is a statement on, what your attractions were, and maybe some other kind of inner workings as well. But I think largely the fact that he's like not even really a Christian guy, right? He had all these weird instances of going to India. It just makes me question like what kind of guy that is. And I think somebody kind of worded it better where maybe just by proxy, the fact that he married outside of his own race is kind of a sentiment of like how he feels about it. But maybe it's too much. Maybe that's overthinking it a little bit too much from there. Now, those are both the clips there from Nick But again, I do think there is a possibility that this, again, isn't in the framing of the political, legal sense of getting rid of JD Vance, but maybe in a way to elevate him and promote him in the public eye once more. And I said this earlier before we watched the Nick Fuentes clips, but I largely do have a theory that JD Vance could be the one to broker the peace between these two guys. And what I mean by that is maybe we're going to get a viral narrative of how that JD goes out of his way to give Elon Musk a call, or JD Vance gives Trump a call. And, in some way he's like at the center of it. And the whole public goes, oh my gosh, wow, we haven't had a vice president like JD Vance in so long, guys. Look how good JD Vance is. He talks so well. I mean, and again, admittedly, he does talk pretty well, especially compared to the other guys. He talks more like a normal politician. But as it refers to Palantir, I'd like to actually move over to Jimmy Dore. I'd like to give Jimmy Dore a lot of credit because he's moved to a lot more of a agreeable position than where he used to be. Obviously, if you're not familiar with Jimmy Dore, this guy kind of basically fell away from the left over COVID. Largely, he disagreed with the lockdowns, and then that was kind of like his exercise into being like an independent kind of journalist or commentator here. But we'll go to his post. He's got a decently long post here, actually, but he's got a video attached to it as well. Now, Jimmy Dore coming in, and one thing I will say before we get to this too is I do think there is a degree of the overall nature could have just simply been they kind of not fabricate, but they push a story that's so fiery and spicy in public that of Elon and Trump that the Palantir story gets brushed under the rug and everybody quits talking about Palantir. In the same exact way that when the H-1B visa discussion was getting to its apex point, and it looked like, at least on the ground in the grassroots efforts, that most people were slamming and ratioing anybody who was agreeing with Elon's H-1B stance, he comes out of nowhere and goes, wait a minute, hey, look at these grooming gangs over in the UK. And just like that, in a matter of like a day and a half, the entire news cycle, no one's talking about H-1B visas anymore, and everyone's back talking about Islam and why Muslims are bad. And like I do agree in the sentiment of like, yeah, we want to move away from the Islamic influences and bolster the Christian influences, and or at least course correct them. It was a cheap way to kind of shift the narrative in the news cycle and get it off of him. And it was another kind of spurg out moment from Elon Musk there. I do see King Saluing saying Rubio over JD Vance. I mean, Rubio is a war hawk too. I mean, I really don't know if you can get more pro-Israel than Rubio, right? Marco Rubio has like this moment where I think some reporter he recognized, I don't know who they were with, but he sees him and he was like, oh, are you recording? He's like, yeah, let me tell you this. And he grabs a microphone and he was like, and burn them all. We'll hunt every single last one down. I get he's been doing better, performatively so. But just by the fact that both him and Donald Trump are both on Miriam Adelson's payroll, I don't know. I really don't know what to think about that. I wouldn't take either of those guys, to be honest with you. Same thing with like JD Vance and Ron DeSantis, or not JD Vance, Vivek Ramaswamy, brother has a ridiculous name, and Ron DeSantis. I really don't like any of those guys across the board. Now, if I was forced to pick, I probably wouldn't vote. But like, I don't like any of those guys. I don't like any of their propositions. I don't like any kind of the leanings. I think maybe Vivek Ramaswamy speaks the best, but in terms of like, where are his other predispositions and his value sets as it pertains to like God and Christianity and things like race and all of that, it begins to call into a lot of things into question there. I do see Vince Staples says, can't trust Elon or Trump. They both kiss the Wailing Wall like good little guys. That is true. That is very true. And Rubio does speak a lot of mouth to that too. Also, what's up, LOL Marble? Guys, to see everybody who's came in here recently. I do appreciate you guys. And again, yeah, big shout out to my following basically tripled over the last week. So again, all the brand new faces here, I'm very happy to see you. I'm very glad this is actually, taken off a little bit. So, and I don't do these streams too often, but I do want to do them every so often when it seems like it would be better than a video would cover it. So just give you a heads up. But again, very appreciative that you guys are here. So thank you very much. But back to the post here, I will go ahead and put it on screen. We have Jimmy Dore, who is highlighting a lot of his, contentions with the Palantir story. And I'm glad he's still going at it. But he writes, And again, this is quoting an Alex Karp clip here. Alex Karp, again, the individual there on the left, is the co-founder of Palantir, is also the one who can be spotted on the, I believe it's the CNBC interview, where he brags about Palantir Gotham systems quelling political dissent. But here's Jimmy Dore writing, does this guy look like someone panicking? And thou doth protest too much? That's because he's doing exactly what he's being accused of, and people are starting to catch on, and he's panicking. Now, we will watch the clip here in a second. He does have a little bit of a freak out here. We won't watch the whole thing, but just to get an idea of why he's losing it. And he goes on to write, Palantir is creating the most mind-boggling surveillance state apparatus known to man, and they're doing it in conjunction with the Trump administration. It used to be called total information awareness. Not only are they taking your IRS data and your Social Security data and your healthcare data, but they are compiling your buying habits, your phone calls and texts, your Google searches, everything and anything about you, and they put it into a database on you. You will be controlled in all things, including pre-crime. You will have an affected social credit score and a digital ID and central bank digital currency. Trump is the perfect person to have this happen under because he sells himself as the opposite of a deep state character, and so it silences his base, which is the natural opposition to this kind of surveillance state. It's worse than you think, and it's definitely why the head of Palantir is appearing so freaked out. People are catching on. So the video he's responding to is Alex Karp, freaking out a little bit, and this was on CNBC here as well too. And it is a kind of odd, it's an odd thing. Now they write, Hotspot writes that he's responding to the backlash from the New York Times article. Now the New York Times, they worded it a bit more politely, if you will. The New Republic, I believe, when they aired their article, and it was over the same exact thing, the New Republic article actually highlights the building a master database. The wording they used was a lot less friendly, a lot more against what they were seeing from that. But we'll go ahead and watch a little bit of this clip here. And again, this is Alex Karp trying to defend what Palantir is and it is going to do. But here's a little bit of it, and we'll go ahead and play it because he starts losing his mind pretty quickly.
The Palantir platform, despite what you might read at the New York Times, is actually the most secure, the hardest platform in the world to manipulate and change. Of course, any technology can be abused. But if you wanted to abuse the technology, if you wanted to use the deep state to unlawfully surveil people, the last platform on the world you would pick is Palantir. Because
now, when I first heard this the first time, my immediate thought goes to then what? What platform, what program would you be using then, right? Is the CCP selling out their Chinese version in Mandarin that the U.S. is going to use? This just seems like a retarded take. And I spoke a little bit on the last show too, which was the theory that maybe this was an Elon versus Peter Thiel beef, where maybe Elon just felt slighted that Grok was going to basically be under the purview of Palantir and Peter Thiel based on what was slotted in the big beautiful bill, which was the clause that no state is allowed to regulate the AI for 10 years. Only the centralized federal agency would be able to do that, which in turn would mean that Elon Musk would lose, I would imagine, his ability to have full reign over what his AI programs are doing, especially if it's interconnected to the web. And if they're deeming it or calling it a national security risk, I would assume it would take Grok and it would put it under the purview of the government. And now maybe that's where the real beef is at. Maybe that's what his anger is directed towards, but he's not being overt about saying it because you give more credence to the idea of what the AI is going to be doing, or at least the nefarious means of which is well in there too. So just something to think about, because I also was at least Elon's not been vocal about any kind of product he's been building with, and I think at the same time, it's, to me, maybe he is. Maybe there is some kind of product or program that Elon is building and he's putting forward. And it's just not vocal or not public, I should say. But part of me does think, maybe that's a bit more too conspiratorial, but here's the rest of it.
Because of the granular way we segment and put together, and the security models and the access control models that are in Foundry natively, not a built-on addendum. And by the way, That focus on civil liberties is making us really rich, which drives the woke, pagan, religious practicing, Neanderthal thinking people who ignore technology absolutely nuts on the right and the left while we're building value. By the way, I asked for permission before I went nuts from our wonderful, slightly conservative and highly substantive partner, and he gave me permission to embarrass him. He didn't realize it'd be this embarrassing.
So you get the idea. He's obviously a little frantic in defending his idea there. And they do have quoted there that initial part that we did go over already. If you wanted to use the deep state to unlawfully surveil people, the last platform in the world you would pick is Palantir. Don't believe anybody is ready for that. Now, I think more importantly, though, and again, credit Whitney Webb. Whitney Webb, again, one of the most prominent, well, I can't even say prominent because half people don't even know who she is. But largely a lot of the work that we've gotten around the inner workings of what I would largely say the deep state, or again, as Liquefier put, right, Jay's, whatever you want to put it in there. We all know who it is. She has, for whatever reason, and I think she got a lot of flack too, because she was very vocal about Trump right before the election too. And people were just mad about her, right? And this goes back to the whole Big Tent thing. And it's like, you know, the cult of personality, and it needs to be more about like what you align with and less with who. But again, here's Whitney Webb and Jimmy Dore, as he says, here's her explaining it. And this was about a year ago. So it's a little over a year old. So here's Whitney Webb basically going to break down exactly what we're seeing right now. So if you didn't already listen to Whitney Webb, here's another reason why you should start today. But here we are.
Yeah, so total information awareness was defunded by Congress not long after it was launched because every mainstream media outlet, the ACLU and organizations like it across the board said this will end privacy for Americans.
Yes, just to catch back up on there. Yes. Liquefier. Yeah. I already talked about that a little bit ago, but yeah, just a refresher. Yeah. Alex Karp, the guy who we just watched in that frantic defense of Palantir, was indeed the same person who bragged about Palantir Gotham's AI software quelling dissent in Europe. But in his terms, more specifically, quelling the far right. I did highlight Laura Loomer's response to that in the JD Vance exposed video, where Laura Loomer says, well, what the hell does the far right mean? She's like, I'm considered far right here. And truth be told, like, yeah, like a lot of people get called far right when they have the most basic, even just mundane conservative kind of opinions. It's wild. And so I do think there is some fear there with the semantic arguments and the fact that our definitions depend on who is behind the wheel. But back to the video here.
It's like, it's unconstitutional. So it was defunded.
And why? What did it do? What did it do?
It sucked up. It was going to basically spy on all Americans, total information awareness, right? And decide who was going to commit a crime before it happened.
Yes.
Terror attacks before it happened, bioterror, even pandemics before they happened, which is why a lot of the policies that originally total information awareness proposed came back during the Trump administration during COVID. And Palantir was the contractor for all of those. What do you know?
So,
but anyway.
So TIA, so just to get, so this TIA thing, which came from Main Core. So TIA, they're going to use.
It's related to Main
So
Core.
Related. So they're going to use every telephone call you ever make, every text you ever make, every Google search, every website you ever go to. They have a way of collecting all of that data.
They collect all of it.
And they put it into a database on you, and they have this kind of capability. And so immediately after this was invented, you're right, all these organizations pushed back against it. So the government said, okay, we're not going to do it anymore. But then Palantir was like, well, we'll do it because we don't have those.
Well,
go ahead.
It's even worse than that. Palantir didn't exist yet. Peter Thiel created Palantir as total information awareness was getting into trouble and experiencing the public backlash. And as they were setting it up, they used Richard Pearl to connect them with Poindexter, who was running total information awareness about essentially privatizing the program and having Palantir do what TIA or total information awareness had intended to do. And total information awareness, though it was housed in DARPA, was intimately pushed and developed with CIA involvement, particularly the chief information officer of the CIA at the time, a guy named Alan Wade, who was actually a business partner of Ghislain Maxwell's sister, Christine. Fun fact.
So let me just break in just one more sec, just so people realize the scope of what we're talking about, because this is really ominous, right? So, and this has been coming for a long time, and now Peter Thiel and Palantir is at the forefront of this. And so Poindexter's and a DARPA program manager, this is from your article, LifeLog this is what they sought to do. They sought to build a database tracking a person's entire existence that included an individual's relationships and communications, meaning phone calls, mail, email, all, plus their media consumption habits, their purchases, and much more in order to build a digital record of, quote, everything an individual says, sees, or does.
Jeez.
LifeLog
this program was LifeLog. Yeah.
This is.
So with this, obviously, this is a little terrifying, right? Basically, has all of the markers of what we have been led to believe by figures like Alex Jones and many others when they scream about the Chi-Coms when they're building a social credit system, if you will. I did notice a couple of chats didn't make it on screen. Looks like YouTube's being extra today. But as it pertains to that, right, I think the closest that you can actually get to what this would probably look like is probably a combination between Minority Report as well as Psycho-Pass. Psycho-Pass is probably way, way, way less known, but the makeup of what they're talking about in terms of pre-crime is very Orwellian. But it seems to be this AI will be a long-term thing. It'll be as if it is like reading your stats in certain times. And so it's obviously really confusing in terms of like the expansive nature of what it can all do. However, when the way they frame it with the pre-crime and being able to get reads on people, right, and getting an understanding to quickly build out a profile of who somebody is to gather maybe what their predispositions are, leads me to believe that it will be a point where if you are getting too angry, right, maybe you're getting too irritated, right, you might get ding, 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 something starts going off. Palantir gets notified like, oh, hey, this person might commit some act of violence. And then I don't know, maybe it gets, someone gets a tap or a call at your local police department. I don't know, but I think Psycho-Pass is the one that kind of highlights it the most in terms of like cops will be able to like point a gun at somebody, know what their name is, know like who they are, where they live, what their general belief kind of system is. And like that goes to a degree where it's a little terrifying. But I'll go ahead and play this out a little bit, and then I'll catch back up on the chats here.
LifeLog. They would then take this unstructured data and organize it into discrete episodes or snapshots while also mapping out relationships, memories, events, and experiences. This seems so Aldous Huxley crazy futuristic, yes. But it's not future, it's here now, and they have
these happened decades ago,
and so the person in charge of this right now, or the person pushing it in the private sector, would be Peter Thiel, and Peter Thiel is now responsible for JD Vance's funding and getting JD Vance connected with Donald Trump, and for being a big funder of Donald Trump and JD Vance's campaign right now. And so that's why this is all important.
Yeah, it's also important because Palantir is really a CIA front company.
And that's the big part that people kind of miss too about Palantir is its connections to the CIA. I believe it was through In-Q-Tel largely. I mean, it's been a minute since I went through the breakdown of where the funding came from Palantir, but it is connected to the CIA. I do want to catch back up on chats here. I left a few behind actually. Let me go back up here somewhere. I did think that was funny. Xena Delta said to use the R word. I'm out. Yes, quite often actually. So much so that I think my wife's family dislikes how often I use it. Also, yeah, make sure you smash the like button. That helps the channel tremendously. Abigail Shepard says that guy needs PR training. Yeah, never going to happen. And then someone also wrote, I hope Nick catches wind of your channel. I doubt it. I'm way too small right now. And even if they did, he'd probably roast me, I would imagine. And then Jay, what's up? Also, hey, what's up to all the new people who are in here? Nice to see you, Jay. Jay, longtime Jar Opener podcast fan. Vince Staples writes, Palantir considers wanting to keep Ireland Irish, extreme far right. Any sense of nationalism will always be compared to Hitler, which is their way to keep us enslaved. And you are 100% correct. The mythos of our society is the post-war consensus. And that largely is built on the back of the Holocaust remembrance and the everything and all the sentiments that go along with that. People can probably recall when Martyr Made was literally smeared in the public purview after what did he do first? It was his appearance with Tucker Carlson. Martyr Made, a historian podcast maker, made major headwaves when he decided to say that his chief villain of World War II was in fact Winston Churchill and not Adolf Hitler. That spurned everyone to scream anti-Semitic. People lost their minds over it. Martyr Made was smeared all over the internet. And then he actually ended up on Joe Rogan, where it continued. And I believe in that quick succession, he had Ian Carroll on as well, too, in that same kind of time frame. But again, yes, largely that nationalism has been pushed and swept and stapled to Hitler, so much so that any ounce of nationalism that seems to show itself is quickly, again, able to be cudgeled to death because they say no. We say no to Hitler. Anything that's nationalist must be literally Hitler. And therefore they use it as the cudgel that it has become. But catching up on a couple more of these here, we have Jay writing, the new smartphones are even better at farming your info. I'll stick to my old phone. Yeah, as much as I get that, but brother, man, using a flip phone in today's day and age, I don't know if I could go back to that, but maybe I should. Maybe that's just me being a zillennial. And then Vince Staples also writes that our founding fathers would like at the current conservative party and be amazed at how liberal, non-religious it has become. Yes, the right wing, the true right wing doesn't exist. The true right wing was banned off the internet a long time ago. I barely even exist. Obviously I have to do all these kind of like self-censoring techniques, got to pick and choose what you really talk about, how far you say, how far you push on something. Because if you do, obviously you get put in the same kind of limelight that Nick Fuentes was, and then you get nuked from orbit, and man, you'd be lucky to make any kind of career out of there, right? We see Fuentes, right? Largely, I argue he's probably the greatest orator of our time, especially in political pundits. And this guy was barely able to survive the smear campaign, that long-term smear campaign, I may add, and still ongoing to this day. So if you don't have extreme talent, I mean, you're not going to survive the system trying to crush you. I mean, he literally just reached 150,000 followers on Rumble. I mean, there is a extreme weight to the consequences of the censorship regime, and as well as the deep state and all of those. And as he says, the Jewish characteristic to all of these elements as well, too. And it can't be understated. But going back up here, I lost my spot. Apologize. We do have Marble saying, the longer I exist on this planet, the more I know people just make stuff up. That is a big part of it, the deception aspect. Neuralink is a thing, too. Abigail Shepard writing, what is the anime about killing people before they commit a crime? That is Psychopaths. Forgive me. That is Psychopaths. Largely, you can really probably just watch the first season and get a strong idea of it, or even just the first episode. It's extremely brutal. I will tell you that it is definitely an 18+ opening episode there. And I'm never going to get the Neuralink chip. I don't care if it's the only way you can buy food. Never going to get it. Hey, what's up, Tix? Tix says, yes, you love America, effing Nazi. And then we got everybody saying, yeah, Patton was right. That's funny. Very funny. But yes, agreed largely with everything that you guys said there. And the one thing I wanted to actually point to too, which is kind of a funny thing as well, we'll have a little bit of fun with it, is the layers here. There are layers to Elon and Trump's fallout. So I'll blow this up a little bit. Everyone's probably familiar at this point with Elon's mattress activities as it pertains to Ashley St. Clair and Grimes and Amber Heard and so many others. You did have this kind of, I think it was Kai Trump was gifted a Tesla for her birthday, I'm pretty sure. But just a funny thing of note here, right? You can kind of see Elon looking at Kai here, the faces, and then you can see Trump Jr. in the background, obviously eyeing them up there. And I think it was funny. Maybe that could be a layer there too, right? Maybe there was maybe a slight bit of tension that Trump may have felt that Elon might have been eyeing his granddaughter. And so, maybe it was something like that, right? I mean, that would rub me the wrong way, right? Especially as business partners too. You don't go out, you stay away from my daughter. maybe there's really nothing to that at the end of the day. Now, that was basically kind of the broad update to what we had coming out of the Trump and Elon fallout. Basically that, they're not going to call each other. Trump said he doesn't even give a shit. That Elon basically needs to calm down. He burned himself out, which makes me think again, here's going to come JD Vance, right? JD Vance would be the guy that saves the day, increases public sentiment, and then again, get closer to the American people's hearts. Now, the next topic actually is going to, again, be loosely tied to this as it pertains to the Epstein files, which again, big bomb yesterday was Elon Musk saying that Trump was involved with the Epstein files. But what we got here, and I'll put it on screen from Dominic Michael Trippi, is that what we got is this. Jeffrey Epstein and President Trump's former lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, is calling for the Epstein accomplice, Ghislain Maxwell, to be pardoned. And then, Viva Frei just being wrong like he normally is, which is just insane. Viva Frei is, in the last couple of weeks, has really gotten off his rocker. I'm not sure what's going on with him. But Roger Stone and Alex Jones were talking about it a little bit. Might not really need to get into that. I wanted to go to his full statement, though. This is what Alan Dershowitz actually said. So Anomaly pulled it from the Daily Mail. And so what he writes, or what he says, Alan Dershowitz, is he believes the disgraced socialite's excessive 20-year sentence should be commuted for her immediate release and then a pardon. Certainly she should get a commutation. The sentence was way, way, way in excess of anything she was alleged to have done. She was in part a victim of Epstein. The fact that Epstein died made her a primary target and caused an excessive sentence to her. Some executive clemency is very much warranted in her case. Now, don't get mad at me, but I do think there is a slight bit of argument there, which is the fact that, again, the famous line from the Ghislain Maxwell story is she was charged with trafficking to nobody. So there is a part there where there's like some lacking, in the way that they did the trial as well, like was largely behind closed doors too. But I don't agree at all. And especially it's a little odd too, because Alan Dershowitz was even calling for the Epstein files to be released. He was saying things like that he wanted it to come out because he wanted his name to be cleared for how much he has been getting smeared for being involved with the Epstein files. And it just seems like a weird kind of like turnaround, just like, if she wasn't that bad, I don't know. It just seemed a little odd, the way that it came out. And obviously Dershowitz is a questionable character in general. Now, as it pertains, though, to the Epstein files in particular, I actually caught this little clip again from, what's his name? Sean Kelly. Sean Kelly, that's who his name is. Because Sean Kelly has a podcast. He's got a lot of followers on there. He's got like multi-million followers. I've never heard of the guy before. Only reason I'm familiar with it at all is because he went ahead and said he would have Nick Fuentes on his podcast. And it was a bit more of a viral moment because I believe it was like a year ago. He was talking to Lucas Beasley, and he said then that he would never have Nick Fuentes on because he was too like racy or spicy or racist. I don't know what he said there. And so with that, though, there's a good clip that I got from Nick Fuentes on the Epstein files. And the part to remember here is that this was pre-recorded. So this actually happened before the Elon and Trump beef there. So something to keep in mind as we go through this. We'll watch this video here, and then I'll catch back up on chat. I did see a couple people ask a couple questions to me. I'll respond as soon as we are finished watching this. So let me move this over here. So this video right here is from Kaiser Rev. He's a Fuentes clipper, if you're not familiar with him. But instead of reading the quote, we'll just go ahead and watch the video.
You think they're going to release the Epstein stuff soon?
I don't think it even exists.
Really?
I think it's been destroyed.
Wow.
Yeah, and they promised they were going to release those files, and they did this big photo op where they had those binders, Jack Posobiec and Scott Pressler and all those guys. They did this big social media summit. They went to the White House. They made a big show of it. And the binders contained documents that had already been declassified. So, it's really funny. During the election, they asked Trump, will you release the Epstein files?
Yeah.
And he faltered on that. They did this one interview. It was very rapid fire. They said, will you declassify JFK? Yes. 9/11? Yes. Epstein? Yes. Well, and it was literally that obvious. And
I'm like, are people watching this? Like, is that not the cat that ate the canary? Like, 9/11, absolutely. Well, and he said specifically on Epstein, he said, well, some people might be in there that are innocent. Okay, so who are we talking about there? Who might be in there that's innocent? I wonder who was on those flight logs.
Even before the Elon and Trump beef, we have Nick actually thinking that largely that Trump probably is implicated in the Epstein files because of the way that he addressed it in this video. Now, I went out of the way to make sure I found that exact video here. So the video he's referring to, he actually posted himself. So this is what he writes here. There is zero doubt in my mind that Trump is named in the Epstein files. Elon is telling the truth. So here's that video, 24 seconds long.
Would you declassify the 9/11 files?
Yeah.
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah.
Would
I
you,
did a lot of it.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world. But I think I would.
Would you declassify the 9/11?
Right, so the rapid fire way, and then the way he addressed the Epstein stuff, there might be some stuff in there that could, really kind of ruin someone's and so obviously, to back up and verify what Nick Fuentes had said there. To return to chat here, though, let me actually go all the way up here. Sorry, guys. It moves a lot faster than it used to. And so Takers asked, and I believe someone already answered, but he said, who is the Churchill Big H historian mentioned? Merton Made. Yeah, his podcast, like alias, is Martyr Made, MIRTYRMADE. But I believe, his real name is actually Daryl Cooper. I think that's how you can find him on Joe Rogan. I'm not sure how it's labeled on Tucker Carlson, but again, Daryl Cooper could probably get, find you right away. Marble writes, wow, with all those wives, who knows? America freaks out on Latter-day Saints. That is true. Jay writes, I think Elon is more likely to have been to the island than Trump. Really? Man. I guess, though, when you think about it, though, there's plenty of images with like Trump with, Epstein. I know there's a famous instance of him kicking him out of Mar-a-Lago, well before this stuff was like hitting, mainstream. I don't know. I still feel like Trump's probably got a higher chance just because he was in New York doing business. He's like been in that field, even though it wasn't politically involved. He's in New York, high end, New York business guy. I would have to think that he would have been involved in it, even if he had never made it, the jump into politics, which he was. Liquefier says if that Maxwell thing happens, forgive me. He says if that Maxwell thing happens, that's sus AF. And that's part of it too, right? And he's referring to like the Whitney Webb bit there, or not the Whitney Webb, but the pardon there for Maxwell. And I do think I agree, right? If there's a pardon that comes out of nowhere to Maxwell, simply because Alan Dershowitz was the first one to vocalize it, and like by himself, that would be a bit where you go, okay, what's actually the hell is going on now? And Extended Delta says, was she a victim? I don't know, because they haven't told us. Yeah, right. And I'm really not buying the fact that she was a victim. Yes, right. Liquefier pointing out, her dad was Mr. Mossad, Mr. Robert Maxwell there. Yes, I highly, highly doubt that she's a victim. Wessel writes, where did the videos end up, you think? Destroyed, obliterated, no longer exist. 404 does not exist. Cannot find. I don't think there's any at all. I think almost all the evidence is probably gone. Okay, it looks like we're largely caught up here. Okay. I'll catch up to some of that other stuff here in a little bit, but referring to, again, the evidence of the Epstein files. So the next thing that we ended up getting was this from Kash Patel, because Kash Patel's Joe Rogan interview today, I believe, was uploaded earlier, and that has had even more stuff in relation to this. Let me go ahead and put this on screen. This is actually from Clint Russell, where he writes, Dr. Michael Baden sat in on the Epstein autopsy and rejected the findings that he had killed himself. This was widely reported years ago. Kash Patel, who is adamant that it was a suicide, admits here that he hasn't even looked into the report by Dr. Baden. Deeply concerning. Now, I'm actually not going to full screen this one because Joe Rogan does a lot of copyright. So go ahead and play it as it is right here.
Did you ever see, do you remember that HBO Autopsy show? Dr. Michael Baden, he's a famous forensic scientist. So he's a pathologist, and he reviewed the case, and it was his determination that it was a homicide because of the way his neck was broken. And what he said was it was indicative of a ligature strangulation. And it was because of the positioning on the neck where the marks were, that it wasn't indicative of someone hanging by their weight, which had been higher on the chin. And there's a specific break of the bones and the vertebrae that's consistent with someone who is just strangled to death.
I haven't seen it. I'll definitely take a look at it because that's part of my job.
You haven't seen that?
The report on that? No, I haven't looked at that.
Did you ever see?
Like what? like what? How do you not look at the autopsy report? Like, I don't know, man. I'm getting so like what's the word? Like jaded on this. And like maybe, you know, cognitive dissonance, maybe a better one, where it's like I'm beginning to get to a point where it's like if we're never going to get him, it's just like this is like almost like it's never going to end. Like this is never going to end. It's this ridiculous cycle. But it's a great point, right? It is concerning that you do have with this guy who was there during the actual autopsy and was a doctor and is one of the guys who's vocal about rejecting the fines. And then for you to have given us so many positive statements that it's just, you give all these positive statements that nope, he definitely did it. We know he did it. And then you're like, but what about the guy who disagreed, who wrote the autopsy report that a lot of people refer to? Oh, I've not looked at that. Who is that? Like, yeah, more than likely everything Kash Patel has said has largely been told, this is what you're going to say. And he probably has not seen jack shit. And he's simply just being pushed into a specific spot. But wow. I mean, like, I already wanted to deport Kash Patel just because he prayed to the Bhagavad Gita or whatever the hell that's called instead of the Bible. This even more is just like, I have zero trust. There is zero trust right now. I don't believe a single word that's coming out of his mind. And even Joe Rogan, you could see it like, you don't, what? That's just a wild kind of revelation there, to be quite honest with you. Just wild. I don't even know what to tell you about that one. But that largely stemmed a bunch of other things going on because Luke Rudkowski, again, in the same line as Nick Fuentes there, where Nick Fuentes believes that no, we do not have any of the evidence anymore, right? He thinks it was largely destroyed. It's gone, doesn't exist anymore. But here is Luke Rudkowski saying the same things. Now, he actually has a secondary kind of twist to it, but we'll go ahead and play this. This is what Luke Rudkowski thinks about where the Epstein files were or what's happened to them.
We ever going to get it?
No, I don't think we will. And that's the kind of sad realization. I think, listen, I think as soon as Donald Trump was elected, a lot of the files, weren't kept. You can't expect criminals to, incriminate themselves. I don't think the files are at the FBI. I think they're at the CIA. Right. I think they're at MI5. I think they're at the Mossad headquarters. Right. I think they're at different places and different locations. But even when they are there, they're not officially writing, "Dear Diary, today we stole this many children from this high school and then we procured them to whoever it might be." I don't think they're doing that. I thought legitimately that there was a whistleblower. I thought that there was someone within the old administration that said, "I got all the documents. I got all the receipts. I got some proof here." That didn't happen here. We got a letter saying, please give us your stuff. And the FBI is not going to incriminate themselves. So I think the administration is stuck in a very tough position right now because they kind of overpromised here. The FBI made sure that they didn't get anything. The one FBI agent that actually held information back was actually forced to retire. And then he got a round of applause from all of the people as he was leaving the office, which I thought was just extremely weird here, as I think there should have been a bigger investigation and potential obstruction of justice charges here if we were taking this seriously. I think some people are and this is why the rumors of a conspiracy are so very vast here, sadly. And
so And, Luke actually joining in on the group of people who do believe that the files are no longer with us, or at least, again, that we can't verify the chain of custody of what happened with these things. And I do think that there is a lot of, they weren't going to incriminate themselves. And I think there's a little bit to be true. And also, again, shout out to Luke, because he did mention Mossad there as well. It's tough. It's tough because I'm someone who deeply wants to know, right? Like, I deeply want to know what was going on. Who needs to go to jail for this? But at the end of the day, too, it also does become a bit of like a distraction, because if we're never really going to get any kind of legitimate answer on this, it's probably never going to come. And and if they're not at the FBI, they're at the CIA. I mean, that means, like, if this is what most people think now, then that means everything that Pam Bondi said with Kash Patel, in those early days before we got the phase 1 ridiculous PR stunt, would mean that, like, they lied through their teeth, right? Pam Bondi multiple times. They were on my desk. Lie. Never had them. Never had them. And you probably never even looked through them. Talked about how she was going through the victims. Lie. Highly doubt that. Talking about how there's a truckload of documents going to be coming to the FBI in different locations. Lie. Absolute lie. I just, like, again, it does get a bit disgusting, right? And this is the kind of stuff that I think most people, it jades them out entirely of politics, and they go, I don't even care anymore, dude. They're all liars. They're all scum. Who cares? It's all going to shit. I'm done. And that's really, like, at the crux of this is a really big issue, because largely that's what happened a while ago. And that's why most men have libertarian flags in their yards and say, leave me the fuck alone. They don't care about politics anymore. But the reality is it doesn't matter if you don't care about politics. Politics cares about you. It's just it's rough, man. But again, it seems like a lot of people are now agreeing largely with what, again, I do credit Borrell a bit too, because he's been saying that for a hot minute as well. No chain of custody. Do we even have the files? Can you even trust them? Does it even matter? And you can see that parroting as well too. So we'll see what kind of cover people run for each other. And no, I know I missed a lot of chats. I'm sorry. It's moving pretty quickly. But the next thing I wanted to move to as well, actually, is going to be the Thomas Massie finding a bit more to the AI clause in terms of what's in the clause itself, which was slotted in on the big, beautiful bill. I believe it was like on page 238 or 239. So, pretty deep in there that, most Congress people won't even look at it because they're not even going to read it in the first place. But this is what we have. And so Thomas Massie, and I believe this is Dana Loesch. It is Dana Loesch. That even more so than the fact that it's going to prevent the states from being able to regulate or have oversight, he's pointing out that there's now it's going to override local municipality zoning laws. So it will mean that nobody can do anything about it at all. Like, no authority whatsoever, unless it is ordained entirely by the centralized, federal, agency or group that'll be behind it. But here's this clip here, about 2 minutes long here from Thomas Massie.
I am prefacing what I'm about to tell you because I'm almost embarrassed to tell you this. I went back and read that provision of the bill knowing that you might ask about it on the show. And I found something I didn't find the first time, which is they say in that bill, not only are they going to override state laws, they want to override state or local zoning laws. Now, what does this mean? When you think of AI, okay, well, we're not going to regulate the software that runs on somebody's computer. No, what they're talking about are these data centers that could be located in your neighborhood. And there's been a lot of contention over these data centers. I think that's what the real intent of this part of the bill is. Facebook and some of these other big tech companies have met the not in my backyard, the NIMBY resistance in areas, and AI wants to make sure that they don't run into that. These data facilities can use a lot of water, use a lot of energy, and they don't want the locals telling them where they can and can't put these data centers. They're going to want the data centers closest to where the consumers are, and so you're going to have that tension. And I know, I went back and read the bill before I came on your show. This specific part says that they want to expedite the zoning and the routing, that the reason they put this law in there is to expedite zoning and routing. Routing also is basically code for eminent domain, running those wires, those big fiber optic cables through anybody's yard they want to. I think it's really dangerous to take that power away. This has been an issue in my congressional district, and the local authorities were able to get a planned data center relocated away from the residential neighborhoods, but they wouldn't have that power if this bill passes.
Basically meaning you would have literally zero recourse in terms of, even if your local municipality would have zero power or authority to be able to not or move things around. And I think the way that he was framing it would be the obvious kind of data server network they would have to build out to cover the entire nation, which would probably vastly include a lot of things like fiber optic cables and anything else that might make up the infrastructure that you would need for this vast surveillance network. I don't know if anyone's even loosely familiar with the way that China looks in certain instances, but they do, for the most part. There's some spots that look pretty okay, but there are some street corners that people have taken photos of there in China where you can just see cameras just wrapped around like 8 different telephone poles in one area, pointed all different directions. So I would imagine there would be a lot of infrastructure that needed to be built. Might not be the most space consuming, but it's probably going to be like everywhere. Probably get it, laying over the entire nation like a cloth almost. So probably be in a lot of places otherwise you wouldn't expect it to be. And again, I do see the chat is moving on my end. I'm sorry, I'm not sure why it's not popping up on screen. Probably YouTube catching a couple of things. I wish I wouldn't do that. Obviously, it makes it annoying when your chat doesn't show up. But that was that, and I thought that was a little odd too. But it shows just how deep that AI clause goes. That again, seemingly not that many people are talking about, since the news cycle has been captured by Elon and Donald Trump arguing with each other, which inversely also means a lot of memes coming out about it, satirical, that also floods, although not being serious, but also floods the space and makes it kind of, again, all you're going to see on your timeline is Elon and Trump. I want to visit the Zero Hedge article next, actually a little bit. We covered it a little bit last show, but just to bring it back in, I do want to catch up and read a couple of these chats here. Some of the ones that I can see. Looks like Jenny Simon, nice to see you. I don't think I've ever seen you here before. Jenny Simon writes, they matched Epstein's DNA to his jail toothbrush, body double. Interesting. I'll have to look into more about that. You also have the Pooge, no way, it's a real name. The Poojanger says, do you think Cash and Dan were just lying to get into the administration, or have they been compromised after getting their position? I can't speak for Cash. I really don't know Cash in particular, because I've never been a big Cash Patel fan per se. Dan Bongino, I think, definitely got compromised after he went in. I mean, you can just trace that directly back to everything he said on his own show, and then see the complete 180 with very little evidence or demonstration of justification for why he's now changed his position, other than trust me, bro. I think Dan Bongino definitely got compromised, and especially the way his body language was during that interview where they did the joint interview with Cash Patel. It did look like somebody was holding a gun to his head on the other side of the camera while they were holding a picture of his family. He did not have, very promising body language on that. Hope Knight said, yeah, the fatigue is real, brother. We got Tixon here writing, sworn in a book of demons. I was done then. I wasn't a Patel fan ever, though, and was not happy he got the position. Yeah, I think most people were not the most thrilled with the Bhagrat Gati, being sworn. Let me catch back up here as well. Sligosha says, Israel's not a real country, is not real. That's funny. That is funny. Hope Knight writes, trust God, not government. Amen. That's largely anybody who's new here. If you don't really know my political alignment, I am a Christian nationalist. I would first and foremost expel anyone who was openly not a Christian out of this country at a drop of a hat if it was my choice. I am someone who actually backs up the argument from Charlie Kirk and others, although I don't like Charlie Kirk in particular, the argument thereof, which is the fact that the freedom of religion is largely the most misunderstood and misjudged constitutional amendment we have in the entire system. I think that confusion has led to largely a lot of the soul-sucking and hollow secular atheist state that we have today. And obviously, with the aid of those of other religions who do not wish to see Christianity prosper, Let me catch up a little bit here. Daytime Mystics is the Khazarian Mafia are tough opponents. That's funny. Okay, catch up a little bit there. Nice to see other people join in here as well too. Titan joining. Okay. And moving on, we got a couple other things. I just want to visit the Zero Hedge article just a little bit. Just to bring that back into the fray here. I'm going to clear up some tabs as well. But just to go back to the Zero Hedge article that we did visit yesterday. Now put it on screen and prepare everybody. It's a very bright white screen. But here it is, obviously at the Walmart of car insurance. But the article that we got just before the massive blow up that happened between Elon and Trump was that Trump was beginning to purge the Israel hardliners because of the fallout they've been having in terms of the Middle East and largely the failure of negotiations that has been going on between Iran and Israel. And I did bring this up earlier today, but the people that they point out outside of Mike Waltz was Erica Traeger, Marav Sarin, and Morgan Ortagus. Now, I know Marav Sarin in particular was a former IDF official, but I think two of them were. I don't think it was Traeger. I think it was Morgan Ortagus. But again, and here it is for Marav Sarin, for her role at the NSC, which is like the National Security, I forget what the full name is. She had worked with Israel's Ministry of Defense and was closely linked to the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Like, I don't know about you, but even if it literally wasn't Israel, like, I don't care. The fact that we can't have a hardline position of not putting forward individuals who have been previously in foreign countries' intelligence agencies or have previously served in foreign countries' militaries, that by itself is an automatic no. You shouldn't be allowed to serve in any kind of role in any government position, even at the local level. Zero, none, nilch, nada. And then you extend that, and I would too, to dual citizens as well. I think that by and large just already presents itself a conflict of interest. You should not be allowed to serve in the American government if you have ever been a dual citizen. I'm not talking if you're a dual citizen right now and you relinquish your citizenship from another country. I don't even know. Not enough. Not good enough. How am I supposed to know that your ties don't run deeper than that and you relinquished it simply because, with espionage and things like that? It's got to go. The dual loyalty, all of it, it's got to go. I want Americans. I want Christian Americans in roles of government, preferably white Christian Americans. But it seems like we're going to have to deal with what we got for right now. So moving on with that, though, we do have the NYC mayoral debate. And I wanted to go to this one because I was mind blown at how just aggressive this debate was. And to demonstrate just how deranged everyone is about Israel in terms of politics in general, and how there is such a religious fervor about how someone's got to be so pro-Israel. Watch this NYC mayoral debate. These are mayors of New York City, mind you, right? Where their only concern is the specific city of New York. We're not even talking about state. We're talking about city inside state lines, and listen to how they talk about Israel. This stuff is insane, man. I'm telling you, like, it blows me away how people get away with this. So here's the video. It's about a minute and a half long, and just listen to how they run this guy through a struggle session. It is insane. Insane. But here it is.
First foreign visit by a mayor of New York is always considered significant. Where would you go first? Left to right, Ms. Adams.
First visit, I would visit the Holy Land.
Mr. Cuomo?
Given the hostility and the anti-Semitism that has been shown in New York, I would go to Israel.
Mr. Tilson, where would you go?
Yeah, I'd make my fourth trip to Israel, followed by my fifth trip to Ukraine, two of our greatest allies fighting on the front lines of the global war on terror.
Mr. Mamdani.
I would stay in New York City. My plans are to address New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and focus on that.
Mr. Mamdani, can I just jump in? Would you visit Israel as mayor?
I will be doing, as the mayor, I'll be standing up for Jewish New Yorkers, and I'll be meeting them wherever they are across the 5 boroughs, whether that's in their synagogues and temples or at their homes or at the subway platform, because ultimately we need to focus on delivering on their concerns.
And just yes or no, do you believe in a Jewish state of Israel?
I believe Israel has the right to exist.
Not as a Jewish state?
As a state with equal rights.
He won't say it has a right to exist as a Jewish state. Be very clear.
And his answer was no, he won't visit Israel.
I said that.
That's what he was trying to say.
No. Unlike you, I answer questions very directly.
All right.
My goal would be to take my first trip to Israel. My wife's life work in this area means a lot to our family.
Like, dude, like, like, bro, like, dude, I'm now, and here's the thing I will say, right? Like, I'm not taking the other guy's side. The other guy, I don't remember what his name is. It's like Mahmoudi. He did an ad for New York where he did it like all in like Arabic. I'm not familiar with the languages, so don't destroy me over it. But he did his whole like New York mayor ad campaign in a foreign language. It's like yeah. So the guy that obviously the whole picture is just awful, right? And imagine like when you're deciding between mayoral candidates, what the hell does what trip they want to take first on vacation on taxpayer dollars mean to any New York City constituent? It's this ridiculous. It's just this insane kind of like. It can only be explained by it has become religious. There is this unknown religious fervor for Israel, and again, a lot of it goes back to dispensationalism and some things that we won't get into right now. We'll save that for another day. But yeah, I'm not too entirely familiar. His name is actually Mamdani. I might be saying it wrong, but that's that guy's name who they basically all attacked for not saying he would go immediately sprint to Israel and pray at the Wailing Wall. And also nice to see everybody who also recently joined. Based Old Man, love the name. Shot, nice to see you in here, brother. They got Christopher Zen in there as well. I think Christopher joined a little bit earlier ago. But again, appreciate everybody joining. Titan. Always love to see you, brother. And here's a couple other things I wanted to move to. We're going to start winding down. A couple other ones. The one big one that I thought about making a video about today was going to end up being like the Dave Portnoy kind of crash out. As it pertained to how it happened between his coworker and obviously the previous event that happened with him. And trust me, I understand like there's a solid Jewish population in New York as well as Jersey. But again, a foreign trip to a foreign country means like what, right? Like, and again, they're mayoral candidates, so their only concern really does need to be the city. I could maybe understand a bit more if it was like directly about, what is it called? Like, anti-Semitism, but they were talking about like a trip. And it's like, who gives a fuck if the guy doesn't want to take a trip to Israel, right? Like he doesn't believe what you believe, it's like, again, but it has, again, the same kind of mythos and fervor to it, the same way that if anyone's trying to be pro-nationalist, you get beat down in a corner, kind of similar to how everybody ganged up on him right there. It's just, again, it's insane. But we have the crash out here from Dave Portnoy. And this was him basically losing his mind on his coworker. The clip that I found of the original from Colin Ruggs, like 4.5 minutes long. I don't think we really need to watch the whole thing to get the idea across. But largely Dave Portnoy had a meltdown on a little podcast he runs with Barstool Sports with a co-host who is also an employee of his. And it was just an awful look. The optics were terrible about it. And I guess the framing here is obviously that, Barstool Sports had a really good run. I mean, I would still consider maybe doing okay, where he ran on the fact that we're kind of taking a step away from the kind of classic news anchor kind of trope that ESPN is, and we're going to kind of cover and commentate and be a news media organization about sports from like an edgy kind of, angle. And this guy who made a lot of money and a very successful program with that is now in turn losing his mind because somebody made a joke about Jews. And I mean, the meltdown can't be understated. So here's a clip of this. I'll go ahead and put it on screen. We'll probably watch until he starts screaming and losing his mind here. But at that, you'll get an idea here. We'll move on. But here's the clip here.
I think right now you probably
nothing
don't
then.
do it.
Nothing. Silence everything.
What do you?
Every comedian, don't tell a joke about it. Because Dave, that's how the world works.
Kirk,
I agree with you.
Go back to your question. When does freedom of speech impinge
That was your
on freedom
question,
of
not
religion?
mine. That was your question.
Answer it.
How many deaths?
Yeah.
I don't have an answer. What's your
how
answer?
in
What's
America, American
what's
citizens?
Your answer? What's your answer to that question?
Now.
Okay, we're there.
Now.
So now what? So now what do we do?
So maybe you stop with the fucking Jew jokes and act like it's not a big deal when someone does fuck the Jews in a bar.
Or no, but here's the thing. I'm with you 1,000% on that. You should have fucking kicked those people out. Of course you should.
I'm not talking about kicking them out. I'm talking about.
You want to go to jail? Like, what do you want? Like, those guys.
You are defending this guy Mick for what he said right after that happened. He's not anti-Semitic.
I'm not defending him. No,
if your brain goes in,
I'm not defending him, Dave. What I'm
piece
saying
of
is,
shit.
you should have him on here or somebody else like that and
Why?
fucking fight with them, because then you have a conversation.
That's what this idiot wants.
Dave, these guys that wrote the thing at the bar, fuck the Jews, right?
Yes.
You're going to fucking fly them to Auschwitz. Some guy tweets at you something. You want to fucking, he's not, you can't come out
it was
for
a bar
5
I
minutes.
owned. It was a bar I owned.
They should have been kicked out. So, but my thing is,
no,
like,
it's not just kick out, Kirk. Are you ignoring what's going on in the world?
No,
right
I'm
now?
not. What, Dave? What do you want to do with those guys? What do you want to do? What do you want to do with those guys at the bar? Put them in jail for 50 years? Fine. I don't care.
I didn't say that. You're.
Just look how straight-faced this dude is. Like, it's hard not to laugh when this guy's just like, I'll wait until they settle it out, right? I'll sit here and be silent. It's wild, man. Wild. But obviously, there's a bit more to it. We'll go maybe like another minute or so. There's one part in particular I really want to hone in on.
You're quite literally changing everything you say, Kirk. If you just want me to kick him out, not mention it, not care that this kid is anti-Semitic, shut up. If you just want me to ignore it.
Don't tell me to shut up. Don't tell me.
Shut the fuck up, you bald fuck.
Okay, go ahead.
How's that?
Oh, it's kill. I'll never recover from that, Dave. Go ahead, continue. I'll never recover.
Well, you're the one who big boss man, don't tell. I'll tell you, you work for me.
Okay, go ahead, continue.
You little bitch, you work for me.
Sure, you bet. For now,
oh, you
continue.
don't? For now, quit. I don't care. I'll
Is this,
take 500 grand.
Is this show or not a show? Like, is this a show or not a show? Like, we can't have a conversation?
You're an idiot.
Okay, continue.
You're literally saying people should be allowed to make Jew jokes, say whatever they want right fucking now.
So the first thing to hone in there is, for one, that is like an awful look too. I mean, any kind of, I think there are scenarios where if a boss tells you like to shut up, especially maybe behind private doors or closed doors, it could be acceptable depending on like the offense, I guess. But the reason why it doesn't make sense, even more so than just obviously being like terribly optic wise for the public, is for one, you're just a douchebag, but two, you're on a podcast. What do you mean telling the guy to shut up, right? Because it's not like he's screaming or yelling or anything. It's anytime he's saying what his thoughts are, Dave's demanding he be shut up, and it's like you're trying to censor your own employee on your own podcast. Like, that's crazy. This is you can't have a conversation when you're doing this stuff. Like, it's But again, let's continue, because the real goal is about, I think 20, 30 seconds from here.
Yes, I think people should be allowed to make jokes.
So how many motherfucking Jews have to be killed before you stop?
That I don't think.
What else? Where else is that happening with the religion or people?
I don't think those psychopaths, I'm with you, they're scumbags, are the worst people on the earth. Should that?
You don't think it's all related?
But Dave, you're telling a comedian not to make a joke?
Nick is not a comedian.
I'm with you, but you said stop all jokes.
Jew jokes of that nature now.
We'll ban Jew jokes of that nature. We'll get the Constitution, we'll get Congress, and stop Jew jokes of that nature.
I'll go back to this.
Yeah.
When does freedom of speech impinge on freedom of religion?
I don't think freedom of speech should. I think freedom of speech is the most important thing in this country.
So they basically argue like that the rest of the time there too. It's Chris Resent said he wants the whole clip. Here, we'll go ahead. There's only another minute and a half. Let's let the whole clip go.
Okay, so people can go kill the Jews, and there's no responsibility if someone goes and kills Jews.
No, that's a crime if you kill somebody.
No, but not saying, hey, go kill Jews.
That's different. No. What do you mean?
You can say somebody should go kill Jews. You don't do it, but someone hears you and goes do it. You're fine with that?
Fine if somebody says go kill Jews?
Yes.
No, that's different than telling. I thought we were talking about telling a joke. I thought we were talking about comedians.
They are all using semantics for anti-Semitism right now. And I can tell the difference because for 20 years of doing it, I've never mentioned it, Kirk.
No, and I said to you when this thing happened a couple
how
weeks ago,
can you not realize we're in a different time right now?
That was the part there where I can tell when it's anti-Semitism. You can't. So you have to resort to me being the one that tells you when it's happening, and only me. And then obviously, like the guy's making the point, what are we going to isolate this one specific group to be protected of? Like, do you not hear yourself? Dave obviously can't hear himself. Very hypocritical. And again, arguing that it's a semantic argument that everybody knows when you make a Jew joke what they really mean by that, right? Like as if there's never any moment in time there could ever be any kind of innocent critique of Judaism or Israel, or that it's all wrapped in one, and any slight inference of such means you must be the most Hitler-loving Nazi that's ever been on this planet. Again, it's just tiring. It's so tiring. But here's the rest of it.
I completely realize, and I'm sensitive to the fact that you're sensitive, and I feel bad.
No, you're not. You don't get it.
That's not true. I am sensitive to it. What I'm saying is it's a fine line. I think you would agree. I think you would agree, so maybe you don't, that when you start harnessing free speech and what can be said and what can't be said.
I'm not saying throw any of these people in jail. You want me to give this kid a pass?
No. If you want, no. What I would like you to do, in my mind, this is why I pitched it to the producers, and you disagreed, and you are the boss. Like I said to you yesterday, it's your dime. You own the company. I thought it would be interesting to have somebody on who you disagree with, who I think at the end you wouldn't disagree with that much, have a conversation, which is what I thought you were trying to do. Hold on one second. Which I thought you were trying to do with bringing these guys to Auschwitz, trying to have a conversation. So you put a name in the face of somebody who you disagree with and have an actual conversation.
Now, what I will say too, don't feel too bad for this guy over on this side. Dave Portnoy earlier today released a video on his X that was literally the same exact scenario, but the other way around. And it wasn't with Dave Portnoy. It was this guy on his own, like smaller show, utterly doing the same exact thing to one of his producers. He was like, "You work for me now. You work for me, you little bitch." Like, da-da-da-da. And it's like, okay, wow. So maybe everybody that's at Barstool Sports is a pathetic, example of what I hate about the regular American man. It is just wild because that guy was also being an extreme dick. So, and it wasn't even like a flex, right? Like when I saw it, I was like, wow, it's the flex here that everybody at Barstool Sports like literally sucks. Like, I don't know, man. What I will say though is Barstool Sports generally to me represents the type of American man that I've come to largely hold a lot of disdain for. The kind of slobby, only thing I care about is watching sports. Only care about, could tell you, and I think the best example was like with Alex Jones, right? Half these guys can tell you like these insane statistics that no one's ever heard of and all these facts from like 2001 during the playoff run in the AFC Championship, but couldn't even tell you what the hell's going on in politics today. And it's like, it's just one of those things, man. I think Barstool Sports and just generally like the sports culture is largely, in my opinion, I view it as bread and circuses. I do think there's a point where you can enjoy it, but just not let it consume your life and be like the number one thing you like always devote your time to, right? I mean, I've even seen it in cases from guys I grew up with where like their whole marriages are getting destroyed because they just want to sit down and watch basketball or football and ignore their wives and don't give a shit about their children. Like, it's gone way too far. But again, largely in part because we live in a very secular, atheistic society now. Christianity is shoved and scorned into the obscurities of the internet, and even those that do exist are the most effeminate, weak, and dispensationalist, Israel-loving version of it, which is also just a perverted form of it. So even at that point, you might as well just be worshiping Satanism. It's just, again, the whole thing's just a big old joke. But I do want to kind of catch up on chats here. I saw a few came in. I didn't pay attention to a couple of them. The one I wanted to catch up on was Jenny. Looks like Jenny responded to me. She said, "Hi, nice to meet you. I'm running errands and gardening, so mostly listening. Either way, I appreciate it very much. Just you being in here and chatting a little bit. Thank you for being here." We have Jenny. Someone also wrote, "I started religion. It's called freedom of speech." That's funny. Freedom of names. Yeah, and then what do we have here? Because I have two different chats going on. I have one that shows me everything that YouTube is not letting through. It looks like Tix Bomber's last 40 messages have not shown up, which is kind of funny. But Christopher Zen says that we're in a different time now, Dave said. So I guess speech doesn't matter as much now, right? Which I think it was like a loose reference to like look at the Middle East, or like maybe trying to parrot this idea that like anti-Semitism is on the rise, right? Like, it's just such a joke, dude. And you add in that part that really drives it home for me, which is like, You guys can't see it, but me, a Jew, I can tell you exactly what's going on. I know when it's anti-Semitism, and you definitely don't know when that's. It's like, dude, I can't stand the game they try to play. Now with that though, that was largely the majority of what I did have for today. There's one last thing I did want to put up here in terms of other news outside of the general idea what we covered today here. But that is, again, just to show you once again how far Christianity has fallen, how little it matters. Here is this clip here. This was the prayer in the GOP-controlled House this morning. Everybody go ahead and listen to it with me, and I'm sure you guys all understand the language as well. Let's let it rip.
As one, we ask of the Almighty to also keep watch over our nation's protectors who work tirelessly day and night to ensure our safety and our race. As one, we ask of the Almighty to also keep watch over our nation's. I
just want everybody to get a real listen for what was being preyed upon earlier today in the GOP-controlled House. Again, like, I'm serious. Like, do not, from this day forward, do not let a day, an hour, a minute, a second pass that you are not utterly reminded that we live in a soul-sucked, hollowed version of our country. It has been perverted and subverted from nearly every single level. Our institutions are gay and retarded and are owned by a foreign country. From the top down, nearly every aspect of it. And it seems, even in the slightest possibly, that Trump may be the only one who is not going full send on all of these things. My mission has largely always been, since I've started this channel, is brute force pushing for Christianity in return to tradition. It cannot be understated just how lost and misled we are when we don't have a cohesive, unifying faith, especially when the majority of all of our founding documents are Christ-breathed. I mean, it literally means nothing. And I do think largely with a lack of specification, I do think the Constitution is arriving at its failed endpoint. I do see the Constitution as a very strong and good document for a period of time. I think as it sits now, it has failed. And I can't remember who the famous quote was, but the saying is, if the law is what brought you here in the first place, of what use was the law? And I do agree with that. And again, to back up Charlie Kirk and Cliff Kinneck, even though I don't like them as much, the freedom of religion, I wish we could find a way to get that pushed back into the Supreme Court and get the precedent changed on the previous kind of rulings on it. And the misunderstanding that obviously surrounds that too, and things like the Naturalization Act, all of it. We've lost so much, and we're such a normless society, lost without tradition, and it's very unfortunate. So major shout out again to Nick Fuentes, major Christian nationalist, Christian populist. Shout out to Andrew Wilson, Christian nationalist, Christian populist. I guess on a lesser note, you also have individuals like Jay Dyer. Shout out to him. I have less of an idea of what he actually views governance-wise. I listen to him less. But shout out to Joel Webman. Shout out to Stone Choir. Shout out to every brother who is putting themselves in the crosshairs to push for Christianity and pushing against the Islamic influences, and even on a stronger note, the Judaism and the Talmudic influences that are annihilating our country, violating it in the most ridiculous way. I hope nobody comes away here being black-pilled, but it's hard not to be given the current state of affairs right now. I think there's always a little bit of optimism just all in general when you do have God on your side. But largely as it looks, we might be on our own for a little bit in terms of how we get this, all the course corrections as well. Titan. Yeah, get strong, guys. It's rough. But again, thanks everybody for being here. Make sure, if you didn't already, subscribe, but smash the like button, punch it, beat it, bop it, twist it, whatever you have to do to make it appear on the video. I would appreciate that very much. And again, thank you to all the new people who are here. Much appreciated. I'm going to try to not make massive mistakes and be more professional as we go through it. As I, continue to grow. Again, the majority of my content will probably be these standalone videos, but I will do live streams every so often. Probably won't be announce them very much or, so just turn on your bell notifications if you are interested in following along. But thank you very much for everybody for being here. And I will see you guys in the next one. And more than likely I'll have a video dropping not tomorrow, but 2 days from now. And again, next week, look for the Project Esther video. That's going to be like my larger project for then. But thank you guys very much. I do appreciate it greatly. And again, it was just crazy to see that one of those videos, it was literally able to take off. But thank you guys very much. Christ is king, always. Support Kash Patel, put women back in kitchens, make men men and make women women. And man, maybe we'll have a chance to save this country. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.